I will say that Senator Coran has done a much better job of that than any other in recent history, but I want to build upon that and do the best job that I can to be president of the district. And I hope to earn your vote come November.
All right, well, thank you, Joshua. Mark, please introduce yourself as well and share why you are running for this office.
Hi, everybody. State Senator Mark Coran. And so I'm married, of course, with a beautiful wife, 37 years, my wife Cindy, 3 boys and 6 grandchildren. Live in the North Branch area. My career experience has been just under 18 years at the Minnesota Department of Revenue. Created all the state's electronic tax filing and payment solutions, which gave me a priceless education on government and certainly is favorable for this role in serving in the legislature. In addition to that, I also
Mark, do you want to? I apologize to bow in here, but I just got a text to hold a second on the
okay.
videos.
Bill, you can hear me though, right?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, you let me know when you're ready.
Just yeah.
Mark, if you can speak a little, you're a little quieter than Joshua was. So maybe if you either speak up or get closer to the mic, that would be helpful too.
How does this help, Dave?
That's really good.
Okay. Yeah, I just moved the mic.
Okay, just want people to be able to hear you. Thank you.
Met the bowling alley and Chuckers in Rush City, sitting in the hall.
Okay.
Splitting my time between another meeting.
All right, Bill. So I'll start again whenever you give the word.
All right. Just waiting for a response here from the chamber, from Melissa. Yeah, right now we did get a response from other panelists that there's nothing online or on YouTube. So for some reason it's not going through, even though it shows live.
So Joshua, can I just ask a question? What year did you graduate from Cambridge ISANI?
Are you talking about Cambridge College?
No, high school.
He was.
I was
to Bram.
homeschooled in Bram. I
Oh,
would have graduated in 2011.
okay.
Yeah.
I thought if you hadn't here, you might have been in the same time as a couple of my kids.
Yeah, the last name is certainly familiar. Did they go to AR?
No, Naultmauer is my children's last name.
Oh, okay. I competed against a couple of them in 1X and speech.
Yeah, Elizabeth.
Katie, yep. Katie too, is that? Maybe not.
We're trying to get it going. So they lost, disconnected.
So Bill, would it be fair just to start over with 2 minutes?
Yes, and I need to, I'm double checking to make sure that we got Joshua in there.
We built an extra time for all of this, so we should be fine, gentlemen.
All right, gentlemen, I apologize, but we're going to sort of start over. We're going to start again with Joshua and then move over to you, Mark. Okay, so I apologize for that.
No problem.
But yeah, it's all about being flexible. So thanks a lot, gentlemen. Appreciate it. So Joshua, let's go back to you and just please introduce yourself again and share why you are running for this office.
Okay. As Bill said, I'm Joshua Fike. I'm running for state senate in the District 32, hoping to represent ISANI and Chisago counties. First of all, thank you for the privilege of being here tonight. This is a wonderful thing that we can still, it's great that we can still do these sorts of forums in the age of distance, socially distant things. Some background on me. I'm a lifelong resident of the district. I was born in Cambridge at the hospital there, and I've lived in Bram my whole life. I was homeschooled in Bram, but I was heavily involved with the arts at Bram Area High School, speech, Knowledge Bowl, 1ACT, and all of the other plays and musical in the spring play as well. I went to Anoka Ramsey Community College in Cambridge for 3 years, 2 of them which were in high school as a PSEO, post-enrollment option. And then I stayed another year to get my associate's degree before moving on to St. John's University, where I graduated in 2015 with my bachelor's. Later that same year, I started work at the Rush City Prison, where I've been working for the past 5 years as a correctional officer. I'm serving the public in that way. And I got into this race this year. I've been a politically minded person my whole young adult life, and decided to get involved in politics directly this year because to be very specific, a couple of my friends got tired of hearing me complain about things without taking a whole lot of action. So here I am taking action, hoping to represent the fine people of our district, and sort of bring more awareness of who the state elected officials are for our area. A lot of times we see our elected officials in election years, and then they sort of disappear, and those of us that don't often go to the cities don't really know who our representatives or our senators are. And I'm hoping to change that with my campaign and hopefully my election. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua. Let's move over to you, Mark. Please introduce yourself and share why you are running for this office.
Hi, everyone. I'm State Senator Mark Coran. I'm 37 years married to my beautiful wife, Cindy, 3 boys, 6 grandchildren, just had a new one born 2 weeks ago. And so with my career, I spent just about 37 years selling business process outsourced services into government, and I always had a job in the private sector. In addition to that, I spent just under 18 years at the Minnesota Department of Revenue, building all the state's electronic tax filing and payment solutions. And that particular background has really proven to be priceless in the caucus and serving in the legislature and really understanding what government's about. What brought me into the race, much like Joshua mentioned, is frustration and of government representation. I do not take off years in between election years. I'm around the entire district. I've been working 7 days a week in the entire district. But really what brought me in is about the accountability of government to its citizens, transparency and accountability. And with my background, understanding how government works, why we get what we get, why it functions and how it functions, and the outcomes, again, my background has proven to be priceless in that environment. So I will continue to fight for our transparency, accountability, and everything that's great and wonderful for our community. The other piece to it is I was born and raised about 4 blocks west of the Capitol. So to have the very diverse mixed background, growing up in that community now since 2007, living in rural Minnesota, really give a full representation for all of our citizens in our district. The health of the entire state is critical for all of us. So with that, I appreciate your consideration. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. So now we are going to go into further questions, and Mark, will start with you with this question, and then Joshua, you'll have the opportunity to answer the same question. So all businesses have been impacted by the pandemic in one way or another.
Bill,
yes.
Is it 2 minutes?
This is a 2-minute. Yes, sorry.
Thank you.
Yep. So all businesses have been impacted by the pandemic in one way or another. Many have taken out loans, applied for grants, and reduced their workforce and expenses to survive. What are your ideas to protect businesses when it comes time for the state to pay back the debt we have incurred because of the pandemic? And again, 2 minutes.
So thanks, Bill. Yeah, I think as you throughout our community, that's what I've been doing nonstop to find what the impact is. Our service industries and all of those alike have been hit hard on the COVID, and then the inability to operate in the capacities in which they had prior to the shutdowns and the continued imposition of rules that make it difficult for them not to open, but to be profitable so they can justify being open. So when we look at the things that we thought were important, getting the CARES Act dollars to our local communities and have the aid distributed through our counties into the businesses and trying to help those the greatest in need. The greatest challenge that we see today is when we get those dollars to them, it's making sure that we can get them out there quick enough. And I'm not sure that the funding has moved out quick enough, but moving forward, it's really going to be how can we further open them more safely? The only way they're going to be able to recover from the financial impacts that are across the board And this is going to affect us at the federal level revenue, state level, and all of our municipal levels, from our schools right down to our cities, counties, and townships, is we need to get our businesses open and functioning. We need to save as many as we can. We've already lost too many. Our main streets have been okay, but there are many at great risk. So getting them open safely, making sure that we can remove the burden of the regulations, make sure we don't continue to create rules and policies that are made by mostly people who haven't ever run a business, certainly not the businesses are business that are on our main street. And so trying to get that accountability back. But first and foremost, the toughest part is getting the legislature reinserted in its proper role so we can address all of the challenges legislatively to make sure that we do that, one, safely, but also that we don't place undue burdens on our businesses. So thank you.
Thank you. Joshua, do you need the question repeated or are you good?
I think I'm good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, though.
2 minutes.
All right, I agree with a lot of things that Senator Coran brings up, and I think some of the important things to focus on as we recover from this is we need to incentivize, keeping these businesses open, like you say, helping as many as we can stay open and getting people back to work. If we can, I'm sort of coming up with some sort of a plan, what it would look like to try to provide an assistance program with some government oversight for some of our businesses that were the hardest hit in some of our small rural communities. And the most important thing, I think, as we recover from this is to keep politics out of this. A lot of times, we see, what we see in the news and the Star Tribune and, on the radio is that, there's this haggling over, well, who's going to be the one that sort of steps in and is the hero of this recovery. That's not what I want to do. I just want to recover. When at my job at the prison in Rush City, when something goes wrong, there's no, well, you're a Democrat, I'm a Republican, or I'm a Democrat, you're a Republican. There's just, we need to get this done and we need to fix things and we need to get back to normalcy. And so that's what I hope that we can continue to foster, is an attitude of non-divisive politics and just public service. So
30 seconds.
That's pretty much all I have to say on the topic. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Joshua. Another question, gentlemen, and Joshua will have you start with this one.
Okay.
If you win your Senate seat, you'll be faced with budget challenges. What are your top 2 state departments or line items in the state budget where you believe we could reduce spending? You have 2 minutes.
Okay. One of my greatest, I wouldn't say greatest ideas, but one of my primary focuses in terms of raising our revenue in the next couple of years, and this isn't an immediate fix, but it's one that I think that we as a state need to make, is, as we see 11 other states in the US do, we need to legalize and regulate recreational marijuana. We've seen this done successfully in Colorado, Michigan. Our neighbors to the north, Canada, have been doing it for a few years, and there's a lot of tax revenue that we can make there. And we would also be cutting a lot of costs in the criminal side of things as it is now. Apprehension, prosecution, and housing these offenders. In my prison, we have a lot of guys, we're the release violator prison. So if you're on parole or probation supervised release and you violate that in some way, you come back to Rush City. Even if you left from a minimum custody facility, you can come back to Rush City if you violate. A lot of those violations are marijuana related. The guy gets picked up, normal traffic stop, and has a minimal amount of marijuana on him. He comes back to prison. And I mean, we can certainly talk about certain crimes, if there were a drug-related crime before and they're caught with that same, another controlled substance on them, just like alcohol would be. If you're caught drinking and driving, you violate parole as well. So
30 seconds.
we would keep those offenders would still come back, but we would greatly reduce the number of incarcerated individuals in our state, which is going to greatly reduce cost. That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Joshua. Mark, would you like the question repeated or are you good?
No, I'm good, Bill.
Okay, thank
So,
you. 2 minutes.
so when we look at the budget challenges that we're going to have that are brought forth based on the business shutdowns and the impact of COVID on our economy, I think it's forecasted somewhere around $6 billion deficit, as well as and likely to go a little bit higher than that. I think the greatest challenge, of course, was when health and human services and schools make up actually 80% of our general fund spending today. And my entire focus since I've arrived has been, well, we're going to have, I don't think there's going to be picking two agencies. My entire focus has been for the dollars that we have today and the transformation, the delivery of our government services. So every single dollar we have is put into the front lines, whether it be the front lines in the classrooms and the unfunded mandates, which are classrooms in schools. We got special ed, where I don't think there's a teacher in this district that tells us that they spend 50% of their time doing paperwork for special education. Many of that's, or much of that's for federal education or from our federal government reporting and not adding value to our classroom. We have the same thing at the state level with many, many different unfunded mandates, which impact or consume resources, which take away from actually providing the service. We can go across every agency, whether it be corrections where Joshua works, and it's spoken to him. It's about putting more people and more resources on the front lines, helping with him, his management staff, all those that are in management need to be trained and on the front lines. When it comes to, thank you, when it comes to health and human services, the very same thing. Health and human services directed, it takes care of our children, our disabled, and our elderly. And when you see the amount of consumption of the revenue we have, which is not put forth on the front lines providing service, it's a tremendous waste of the dollars in which we receive from our taxpayers. So with that, it's continued focus on the effectiveness of what we do get for every single dollar we have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Mark, we're going to stick with you for the next question. This is a little bit of a follow-up question to the previous one here. But knowing the financial difficulties facing our state, which we just visited on, what is your position on funding for school districts around the state in the next 2 years? Can you talk specifically about how you would address the inequities in state funding that have put District 911 in the lower 8th percentile of schools in the state? You have 2 minutes.
Thanks, Bill. So yeah, when you talk about the inequities, especially rural Minnesota, and especially for our district, which is a low tax base state, every dollar that we get or we levy against is a full dollar. It's not offset by a large commercial base. But when you look at the funding in the last 2 years, or the last 4 years of which I've been a part of the legislature, we have put the on top of the base formula 2% and 2%. Along with that comes an annual baked-in 4% cost or increase on an annual basis, which is almost 6.5% total increase in revenue expense. That doesn't include levies, which is now over, I think, $6 billion reflects the levy from property taxes. So from the perspective of how will we get funding, we will take, again, resources that we have the Department of Education and redirect those to the front line and the highest need, which is frontline classrooms. I will look at the Department of Education. If this exercise doesn't cause us to rethink how we do everything in state government and where those resources are applied, I'm not sure what will, because this is an impact on, much like the private sector, they've made a quantum leap 3 to 5 years into the future. Government has to do the same thing to reflect the change in the business dynamics and the revenues that will follow in the ongoing years. We have to get the revenue going, but at the same time, we have to think about how we deliver every government services differently. And it is going to be critical. It's going to be a hard decision to figure out when those dollars, every single dollar that's critical, and one, thus the primary reason for government, is our children, our disabled, and our elderly. So we're going to take the best advice from our committee chair and Carla Nelson, who is an expert at it, to make sure we fund the critical services. And we do have in our tax bill, which has been a focus, is some significant equalization for our rural districts. And that battle is going to continue our fight for that. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Joshua, same question, 2 minutes.
Thank you. I think, it's critical that we we don't just sort of keep working off of that same defunct formula, and that we start thinking about how we can better rework things so that we can fund things in a more efficient manner. I think the best way to find out what our needs are at the school district level is actually speak to people at the school district level, and get more teachers involved, get more administrators involved, getting into the schools and saying and asking what they need at their level. Because I've had some conversations with teachers in the past couple months on just a multitude of issues where they feel a bit unheard, and they have, we have committees and we have people who go to the Capitol to represent for them because they don't have the time to drive down to St. Paul and talk to our elected officials. And we need to find a better way to reach out to our educators who are, underfunded and overstrung. So I think that's the number one step that we need to look at, is figuring out exactly where that crucial funding needs to go and how it needs to be spread out, instead of just throwing more money at the problem in a blind fashion, which I don't think anyone is suggesting has been working, but we need to find a way to change that, because that's what has been happening.
30 seconds.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a difficult problem, and I know there's a lot of paperwork involved, as Mark brings up, for all these federal level funding, and I agree that we need to find a way to make that process more efficient and get some of that red tape out of the hands of the teachers. But it's going to take a coalition effort to do it. Elected officials, politicians, we're not going to have all the right answers. We need to get those answers from the people who do the educating.
Mark, I apologize, I didn't give you 30 seconds, but there was no pause, so.
Yep, I think we're good. Little follow-up question, both Joshua and Mark. How do you view, or how do you define frontline classrooms?
Who do you want to go first, Bill?
Mark, go ahead.
And how much time, Bill?
30 seconds.
Yeah, Bill, the frontline classroom, it's the resources applied to the front lines. When you specifically take special ed, we talk about the cross-subsidy funding, which never comes from the feds. They haven't funded it for 30 or 40 years. Yet the burden and the consumption of the resources, 50%. There isn't a single special ed teacher who will tell you that 50% of their day is spent on special ed. And I would work together. In fact, in this case, I've spoken to many of our teachers that at that point, if the feds are not going to fund the special education, why are we spending 50% of our time doing reporting that we feed to somebody in Washington, D.C. who does not add any value to our classroom? Unleash our teachers to be able to teach.
Okay. All right, Joshua, anything to add to that definition of frontline classrooms and your approach?
Yeah, I think, if we're going to talk about frontline classrooms, I agree that it's the special ed classrooms. And I think another thing I would add on to that is that I would like to see us adding more sort of a counselor role to high schools, especially. I know that when I was growing up, there was one person who was employed by the Brandon Area School District who sort of helped you with what your options might be post high school. And that person was, again, you've got one person trying to serve an entire school district. We need more people like that so that students have a plan post high school, whether that's college or trade school.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Another question here, just for everybody. We are going to go about 10 minutes after 7. Since we had some difficulty on the front end, we want to make sure that both Joshua and Mark have opportunity to answer the questions that came in. And so Joshua, we're going to start with you here on this. You did mention a little bit about legalized marijuana, so we're just going to leave that topic, but we do want to ask about sports betting, and what is your view as far as sports betting and raising revenue for the state without taxing businesses and employees? Do you support this initiative? If so, why?
Oh, thank you. Sorry, a momentary problem with my mute button. This is an issue that, is again, it's one that requires a lot of subtlety and care. because there's a lot at play here. And it's one of those I don't think is recognized as complicated as it is. I think we need to have this conversation. It's something I would like to see. It'd be great if we could get it done. If it's great if we could, have that in place. But we've got agreements with, I believe, with all of our Native American tribes, not to have that involved in the gambling and casinos. So I wouldn't want to dishonor that. This is something that, I have to admit that I'm not as studied on sports betting as some of my other issues that I've touched on. But, it's something I'm open to if it's something that we can all come to a consensus agreement on, or at least, a majority, because there's always going to be people who disagree. But, it's certainly something that I'm open to discussion on. As far as if there's an argument out there against sports betting from a sort of a vice standpoint, I think that those days are sort of behind us. We need to live in our sort of, separation of church and state. I've got my values and my morals that I live by, and I hold myself to those standards, but I can't ask other people to live to those morals and values if that's one of the arguments that I know has been exists out there. At the same time, if we allow more sports betting and we open up another avenue of legalized gambling, we should I would want to also be interested in adding some resources to gambling addiction, help for those types of people, because I could see that exacerbating some of the problems. In fact, it's a funny anecdotal story. No, never mind, I'm out of time.
All right, thank you, Joshua. Mark.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Bill. So in relate to sports betting, it does already exist, and actually have been participating in a variety of conversations. We have some really interesting businesses that play a huge role in the sport betting around the world, based right here in Minneapolis. But right today, as of today, in the work that I've done and examining it, not so sure that there's a role for government. And if there is a role, what would that be? I serve in the Consumer Protection and the Commerce Committee. I could see a role from consumer protection. One, if it's a role that we should take. Two, if we decide that it is a role we should engage in. And two, can we effectively play in the role? What does that look like from a compliance perspective? And what would the costs to enter that? If we were to do that, I would likely support it. It does exist today, but I would also be supporting a free market approach. So having it limited to one entity or another is not what I'm for. I'm open for free market. Gambling is a huge part of all of our state activities, whether it be from the state-run sponsored gambling to our bingo halls, to charitable gaming, to the casinos that we have that are pretty busy today. But today, I'm not convinced that there is a role for government. And there's broad discrepancies in what people believe that revenue opportunity is, from as little as $5 to $15,000 or $5 to $15 million on an annual basis, up to very aggressive forecasts that believe that could be hundreds of millions a year. I don't particularly believe that or see that to date. So I do think it will be a continued ongoing conversation, just trying to figure out what is that proper role. And I'm not sure that we know that or have those answers today. So thank you.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. One last question here, and then we will be done. And Mark, we'll start with you on this one. Do you support an increased state tax on gas? Yes or no? And if yes, how much?
So do I support an increased tax on gas? I do not. At this point, it's like everything else that we've looked at as far as what we get for government. When we can prove that we get great value for the dollars and the tax receipts that we have, and that all the tax receipts, especially for dedicated revenues for highway gas taxes and all those legs that go into it, vehicle parts, sales tax for parts, the Republican caucus, we moved, I think it was about $300 million of existing sales tax motor vehicle parts into roads and bridges. And I believe all of the taxes that are on vehicles and transportation should be applied to roads and bridges. That leaves about that was about half of the sales tax. I believe the other half should be applied to roads and bridges. It'd be another $300 million annually, as well as all of the funds that we have today. We have approximately $300 to $400 million in trunk highway funds that are used for infrastructure projects or other projects that are not roads and bridges. We attempted to have a study to figure out exactly what that is. Trunk highway user funds, which are gas taxes, should be all applied to roads and bridges. If there's ancillary equipment costs and maintaining the highway department infrastructure, those should come out of our other general fund dollars. So at this point, I would not support a gas tax increase. I voted against it on the Senate floor. And again, I think we need to prove great value. I think the reality is when people believe they get great value from the dollars that they're paying and the taxes, thank you, and the taxes that they pay or whatever the fee is, we have to prove that we get great value, and then every dollar that we have today is applied to that particular activity. When we do that, then we can have an effective and open conversation. If there's additional revenue necessary, what does that look like and how do we apply it? There's also my years at the Department of Revenue, we've studied taxation by the mile. All of those conversations are going to continue to happen, but proving great value is our first step. Thank you.
Okay, Joshua, same question, please.
Yeah, thank you. No, I don't support a gas tax as it sits right now. I think this is, if there's even ever a good time for raising on the gas tax, which is, one of the resources that we most rely on in our communities, especially a rural community in which we are, still by and large a commuting community, most people working outside of the district. And then especially you take that and add on top of it that we're in the midst of a pandemic and economic downturn. This is not the right time for a raising of the gas tax. And I agree with some comments that were made by Governor Walz earlier, which is that we're not going to tax our way out of this pandemic. We need to take a look at, what sort of, may sound funny coming out of a Democrat's mouth, but we need to look at we need to look at cutting spending in other areas, excuse me. And what, as we discussed earlier, we need to make sure that those aren't done in key areas like the DHS and the DOC and public transport and the Department of Education. In fact, one of the reasons I got into the race was just economic tightening at the Department of Corrections and budget shortfalls, and we were told that there were a group of us that were working a lot of overtime to try to cover the staff shortages due to COVID, staff shortages just due to a lack of due to just staff not being hired as quickly as possible to replenish our retiring and our and staff that are just moving on to other state departments. And then in the midst of this, we're hearing this is very recent news, 2 prisons, Togo and Willow River, are shutting down. This would be near catastrophic to the DOC. We would have an influx of, we have overcrowded already, and it's going to exacerbate the problem. So we need to make sure those prisons do not shut down and can remain open to serve the public.
All right, well, thank you very much, Joshua Fike, Senator Mark Carn. Appreciate your time tonight, your answering of these questions. And if anybody has further questions that were not answered tonight, please contact these candidates individually. And so thank you very much, gentlemen, and good luck. So at this time, we are going to pause for a moment, and we will make the shift over to the Cambridge City Council. All right, well, we're ready to continue in our forum tonight. And next up, we have our Cambridge City Council with us tonight. We have Mark Zebarth with us, Tom Shibella with us, and Joseph Morin with us as well tonight. Lisa Iverson, I don't see her on the screen, is unable to be here tonight. But we're going to start with you, Mark. And so would you please introduce yourself and share why you are running for this office? And you have 2 minutes.
Candidates, I received some feedback, and so rather than tell you you have 30 seconds, which I don't want to interrupt the flow of your speaking, which I experienced previously, I will just hold up my phone. So if you can just kind of watch. And so at 30 seconds, I'll hold up my phone, and that will be your signal that you have 30 seconds left. Okay?
Okay, go ahead, Mark, 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you to the North 65 Chamber of Commerce and everyone who helped organize this event. It's been kind of an unusual 2020, and we've not had much of an opportunity as candidates to really get to meet the residents of Cambridge. And so I appreciate the opportunity tonight to speak. My name is Mark Zebarth, and I am a resident of Cambridge, Minnesota, very proud member of the Cambridge community. My wife and I moved here in 1989, and we have been residents ever since. I have kind of lived my life through the philosophy that I like to give back to the community that gave me and myself and my family such a great experience. We've enjoyed raising our family here. My wife, Kathy, I have 3 children, Matthew and Michelle, twins, and Mitchell. They are all proud Blue Jackets, and we are proud members of this community. I have been involved in the city of Cambridge for, like I said, 30 years, served in the city council in the 1990s. I've been involved in the Blandin Leadership Foundation. The community of Cambridge hosted 2 groups with the Blandin Foundation where we learned more about community involvement. From those groups, we have many community activities and events that have kind of developed from that. I'm proud to be part of the Blandin Foundation community group. I've also been very involved in my church here, Common Ground United Methodist Church. I've been very involved in that. I've also been involved in the Cambridge Community College Foundation as a board member. Also the opportunity, and I'm excited to give back. So thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you, Mark. You sort of cut out at the very end there, so just maybe do a double check on your mic there.
Okay.
Tom, let's move over to you. Please introduce yourself and why you are running for this office. 2 minutes. Unmute yourself, Tom. Thank you.
There we go. How does that look?
Beautiful.
My name's Tom Shibella. I'm a longtime resident of the city of Cambridge, a graduate of Cambridge High School. My son and his wife are graduates of Cambridge High School. And we have 2 grandboys that will be graduating soon from high school, and they're little hockey players. I have 40 years worked for Isani County in the building maintenance department as the building facilities director. What I bring to the table is something different. I have hands-on knowledge of how the city's infrastructure works. I understand where the sewage goes, where the water comes from, what it takes to maintain and build streets. I also understand the city's buildings and their needs and how they operate and how they maintain. But what brought me into the race was transparency. I think the government really needs to do a better job at being transparent with the taxpayers' dollar. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Joe. 2 minutes.
Hi,
I'm Joe Moran, and I've been in Cambridge for 25 years now, and married to my wife Cheryl for 34 years. And both my kids have graduated from Cambridge Isani schools. I've always been installed with a sense of giving back, and I've always been involved in the communities that I lived in. When I grew up in St. Paul, my parents always drug me to community events, and that's where it all started. I am proud that I've been elected on and off from the city council, and I've worked with the Sister City Program Planning Commission. I've been involved with the city from the days when we were stone cold broke to now that we have a healthy reserve, and we have a very we have a good credit rating and things like that. And that was because of hard work that was done. And I'm proud that we've done that. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. So we're going to go back up to you, Tom, and start with you for this next question. What type of development do you think would best benefit our community, and why?
I think what we really need to do is talk to our constituents, the business leaders of the community, and get their input and get the community involved. What does the community need and want? I think that's the most important part, is getting the community involved, seeing what their needs and wants are. Thank you.
Okay, Joe, we're going to go down to you. Same question, and you have 2 minutes.
To help with the tax base, we really need more businesses. We are the regional center for East Central Minnesota, and we need to maintain that. And to do that, we need more businesses. And businesses help offset the property taxes of homeowners that at this time anyway. So we need more businesses. We already have focus groups and downtown business alliances and east side groups that meet, and we try to bring business leaders together and city council members and that to try to draw in businesses. And we have an economic development director that goes out and helps to do that. And I think we've done a fairly good job of diversifying the tax base, but we need to do more, and we need to do more to help offset the property tax situation we have here in Cambridge. One thing we need to remember is a lot of our tax increases is because we have a very robust and extensive infrastructure system, and that is expensive. Thank you. The council just passed a zoning change to allow parking in the winter of snowmobiles, things on trailers, things like that. And we're going to actually take it up again at our next meeting. So we are listening to the citizens, and we're trying something new. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. We're going to start with Tom, and then we'll go to Joe and Mark for this next question here. What's your thoughts on the plan for additional staffing to address the increase in rental housing in our area and just housing in general? There are a lot of issues over sort of blight properties. People are hearing maybe that the police department are going to be taking over, addressing rental houses and housing in general. Can you give us your thoughts on this issue? And you have a minute.
We need to provide and help business people develop all different types of housing, low income, high income, different housing all over. But again, I'll keep repeating myself that, you know, let's see what the citizens want. Let's see what the business leaders want. Those are the pieces that we should be listening to. We can come up with our own ideas. We can brainstorm. But again, we got to quit thinking the same. We have to think outside the box. We have to be creative when we're thinking. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Joe, 1 minute.
Rental property, blight property is handled on a complaint basis as of right now. And if our zoning, our building officials go out and see something, that, you know, they will enforce as they go. Yes, our proposal is to bring it into the police department for this from now on. And that is to be more efficient because the officers are out there all the time. It will still be complaint driven. We have a rental registration process that has really cut down on the blight properties because it involves inspections, things like that, which has really helped things get better. Thank you.
Okay, Mark, 1 minute.
All right, well, thank you. I guess the way I look at it is I would agree with what Tom said in terms of that we would have to be creative and to maybe think outside the box a little bit about how we can involve many people to explore this issue a little bit more and to make sure that we have a variety of housing stock, and also to make sure as a city that the rental housing stock that we have is something that we as a city can be proud of. And as Joel mentioned, a lot of what we have right now is complaint driven. And I think if we can create a system that is efficient, that also maintains safety and security for our city, I think that's a great plan moving forward. And I would, if elected, I guess I would like to explore that a little more. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Last question here, and we are going to start with Joe, then go to Mark and Tom. This is a 30-second question. And here it is. The Economic Development Director position is being eliminated. Can you give us a response to that? 30 seconds.
Yes, his position is being eliminated as of the first of the year for budgetary reasons, but it's being absorbed by the city administrator and the new administrator's position. If you look at most people know that Linda Wolf is retiring next year. The people that are coming into this position have an economic development background and education. So it will still be happening.
Okay. Yeah, Mark, 30 seconds.
It definitely is something for us as a council to look at and to talk about, to make sure that if this is the direction that we go, that we are not shortchanging economic development. Economic development is extremely important for a city like Cambridge, especially when we're competing against many other cities. If, as Joe says, that it would work best because the people coming in as possible city administrators have that experience, I think that would be fine. But I'm also concerned about making sure that we're not shortchanging economic development.
All right, great. Tom, 30 seconds.
I guess I'd have to ask the question, why? Why was it eliminated? That's the big question I have. We need to look at all the positions in the city. Maybe there's a need for these positions and we need to keep them. But, you know, I don't know why that position was being eliminated. I think that would be my first question, is why?
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Well, Lisa Iverson just got in with us here, and we are at the end of our session, but I would like to give her the opportunity to at least introduce herself and just share why you are running for this office, Lisa, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Bill. I apologize for coming late. My name is Lisa Iverson, and I am running for Cambridge City Council. I love the city of Cambridge and would like to see it thrive. We've been working hard as a council to try and keep our budget in check, trying to keep the tax increases at a minimum. And I did hear the last question about our economic development director. We are trying to get the most we can for our money. We're eliminating the director position. However, we are hiring an assistant and city administrator that will be taking over that department. So we are not going without somebody in that department. We're just changing hands and hopefully keeping it up to the highest potential that it can be. I guess I'm kind of stumped of what more to say. I apologize so much for being late. Thank you, Bill.
Well, it's great to have you on for the 2 minutes you could make it. Thank you very much, candidates, as well. And for those who are with us tonight, if you have any specific questions that remain, just please reach out to these candidates and ask them your questions. So thank you very much, and good luck in the race. We're going to pause for a moment here, and we'll be shifting over within a couple minutes to visit with the Cambridge Isani School Board candidates. So hold on, and we'll be right back. All right, well, welcome back to our forum here with the 65 Chamber. We're having a great night with some great candidates, and we appreciate your participation here tonight. Next up, we have our candidates for our Cambridge Isani School Board, and we have with us tonight Heidi Sprandell and Carrie Levitsky. George Wimmer and Gary Hawkins were unable to be present tonight with us. And so tonight we're going to start with you, Carrie, and I'm just going to ask you if you'd please introduce yourself and share why you are running for this office, and you'll have 2 minutes to respond.
Thank you, Pastor Berg. My husband Alex and I have lived here since 2004. We have 2 sons attending the school district, and I've been a public servant for 25 years. With my experience as a public servant, I am familiar with conservative fiscal management, and I am committed to investing in our community and providing opportunities for our youth. I have volunteered for many different youth organizations, including Cub Scouts. I've taught faith formation. I have served on our parish board. I've also managed and coached youth soccer, and I currently serve on our Cambridge Isani soccer board. I've also been on boards for many different professional leadership organizations, which includes the Minnesota Building Permit Technicians Association and Minnesota Association of Housing Code Officials. So we're currently facing unsettling and unprecedented times. And the past 4 years have been some very challenging years that we faced as a board. So we need some strong leaders that are not afraid to make difficult decisions for what is best for our district as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Heidi, please introduce yourself and share why you are running for this office. You have 2 minutes as well.
I was born and raised in Cambridge Isani. I have 2 kids that went through the Cambridge Isani district. Both graduated from Cambridge Isani and made their homes in Cambridge Isani. I'm a parent and an advocate for a special needs son of 26 years old. I would still like to help and continue being an advocate for all students, staff, and our community. I want to make sure that all students are college and life and career ready by making sure each student has a strong educational core. I've been on many boards, Isani Ice Arena Board, Cambridge Isani Hockey Arena Board. I enjoy volunteering. I'm a server at Wintergreens in Isani, and I enjoy helping people. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you, Heidi. So we're going to go into some further questions, and Heidi, we're going to start this time with you, and you have a minute and a half to answer this. What are 2 or 3 strengths that you would identify our district can be proud of, and why do you see these as strengths?
2 to 3 strengths. I believe our strengths are our staff and how everybody has come together with the COVID going on, how our staff has really stepped up and helped all the students. I mean, it is remarkable. I have parents that have told me many times that, you know, a teacher has gone out of their way, and it's remarkable. A second one I would say is definitely the Woodland building, making sure that our kids have a place that they can call home. It's a great facility for all the students. The Moving Forward program. I wish my son would have had the option to go there when he was going through school, because it is such a great facility for them. A third one, I would say definitely, we've grown as a community. You know, we've grown as the students are becoming one. You know, it's not just individual Cambridge Isani, it's Cambridge Isani as one, and they're growing with the individual learning that they've accomplished. You know, sports are bringing them together. Yes, they have Cambridge Isani sports, but when they get to high school, it's one school, one program.
Okay, thank you. Carrie, same question, minute and a half.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes, what are 2 to 3 strengths of which our district can be proud of, and why do you see these as strengths?
So I feel that we have many, much more than 2 or 3. One of the things that we've accomplished is that we've been the recipient of the Minnesota Department of Education School Finance Award for 6 years in a row. We've also started the Change to Chill program in collaboration with Alina Health. And this opportunity provided additional training for staff to better support our students. And we were also able to create a chill zone for students that have that need. We've also done at the primary and intermediate levels, we've done what's called the Sheridan story. And this has had a positive impact on students and families by fulfilling the food gap that many of our families have during the weekends. Another one is Dollars for Scholars. Our generous community has provided 202 scholarships with a total value of over $182,000 to help further our students' education. Along with that, I do agree with Heidi with the Woodland campus. And done? All right.
Done. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. So Carrie, we're going to start with you on this next question, and you'll have a minute to answer this question. Okay. Do you support the operating referendum on the ballot in November? If so, why? Just back up your answer.
Yeah, I do support the referendum. And the reason why I do is because the school board unanimously voted in favor of that. And we have been in this discussion for a very long time. I do feel that we are going to close the gap in funding. And the state of Minnesota has only had 2%, 2 and 2, as far as funding. I'm sorry, what do you call it?
Carrie, your time.
Oh,
Sorry, your time is up.
okay.
Okay, thank you. Heidi, same question. Do you support the operating referendum on the ballot in November? Yes or no? And just back up your statement.
Yes, I do support the referendum. It does lock $103 extra for new funding for the kids, which the school district does need. It also stabilizes the school district's finances. It helps them out. I mean, we've cut so much in the last 3 years that we're losing good teachers. We're losing good students. We need to keep those students and those teachers. Along with, we don't want to cut the budget. We don't want to have a 3rd year of cutting. We want to invest in the students and their future and our community. So yes, I do believe that we need that referendum to pass, and I do believe in it.
Okay, thank you. This next question, a little longer. You'll have 2 minutes to respond if you'd like to take that time. Heidi, we're going to start with you on this question. Please talk about your position on moving toward a more innovative, blended model of education that is student-centered. So moving away from textbook, lecture-based lessons of the past 50+ years. 2 minutes.
it is good to have textbooks. I believe in the textbooks. I still like the hands-on textbooks. But yes, our society is moving towards a non-textbooks society. Everything's electronically done. Example, the Zoom meeting. So I believe that, I mean, yes, it is good, but kids do need to have that hands-on book in their hands sometimes. And I mean, yes, it's good to have the reading, but on the computer or device, but devices do break down. Books don't break down. They do break down eventually over the years, but you can always replace.
Heidi, your screen froze
Mhm.
there, so we can't hear you at the moment. Oh, can you repeat your screen froze there? So can you repeat the last, I'd say probably 20 seconds.
Our kids are more adaptable and are flexible to the computer systems versus everything else.
Responsibility of public schools to deliver.
Sorry.
Yep. Yeah. Each of you'll have to mute when you're not speaking. So mute yourself. Thank you.
Was I done, Dave?
You have about 20 seconds.
Okay. But our kids are more adaptable, and a lot of them are used to the challenges of, computers, and it's a way of doing things. Their kids are coding nowadays, and the STEM programs are working phenomenal with these kids. So books are great. Computers are also great. So it's a win-win either way. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Heidi. So if you could mute yourself, that'd be great. And we'll go over to Carrie here. Do you want me to repeat the question, or are you good?
Yes, please.
Okay. Please talk about your position on moving toward a more innovative blended model of education that is student-centered, moving away from textbook lecture-based teaching lessons of the past 50 plus years. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Bill. Actually, I just had this discussion with our Director of Teaching and Learning, Brenda Damiani, Dr. Damiani, and we are moving towards that. We are testing it out currently with our high school, and depending on how it does, we might roll that out to the other schools. I think it's a great opportunity to engage students that aren't necessarily textbook fluent. They are more apt to be engaged with, for example, myself, I have a kinesthetic learner. My oldest son is in 7th grade, and he learns very much so, with his hands and his body. It's not so much just, reading something. So I think this is the wave of the future, and I'm very grateful that our staff is hands-on and looking at this for our future. So thank you for the question. Great question.
All right. Thank you, Carrie. So for this next question then, Carrie, we'll start with you. So if you can just stay unmuted. And this will be a question for 1.5 minutes as well. As an individual board member, you have no authority. Only the board as a whole can make decisions for the district. What skills or traits will allow you to contribute to effective operations of the board as a whole? You have a minute and a half.
Thank you, Bill. First and foremost, we need to work as a cohesive group. I believe that the current school board that we have now does just that. We don't all agree, so to speak, on things that we vote on, but we discuss and vet and come to a common respect for one another, even though we don't necessarily agree. So for example, there has been things that I have not necessarily agreed upon. However, I uphold what the majority vote is. And I think that's very important. I think that when you have a loose cannon that kind of goes off on their own and starts, their own tirade, so to speak, I think that you compromise what we strive to do as a district. So again, I really believe that just upholding the majority vote and upholding what we decide as a board is most important.
Okay, thank you, Carrie. Okay, Heidi, same question. Do you want me to repeat it or are you good?
If you could repeat it, that'd be great.
All right, as an individual on the school board, as that member, you have no authority, but only the board as a whole can make decisions for the district. What skills or traits will allow you to contribute to effective operations of the board as a whole? You have a minute and a half.
Thank you. Like Carrie said, yes, we have one vote, but we all vote as one collective unit. And we talk a lot in our meetings, and we make sure that everything is brought out on the table, and we want to make sure that everybody is comfortable with it. It's, even though I may have a no vote for something, it's still a value. It's not a bad thing or a good thing. It's each one of us has a value, and that's, it's a great thing. And with the school board that Cambridge Isani has, we all are very united, which is a very hard thing to come across. A lot of school districts don't have a united board, and with Cambridge Isani, we do have a united board, and it's an absolute gift to have a board that enjoys to work together for the district, for the students, for the community, and for the staff. So, thank you.
Can I add one more thing? Sorry, since I didn't use up my time. I just wanted to point out, is that okay, Bill?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to point out that many of us school board members attend committee meetings prior to the actual school board meeting. So we completely vet out, finances and policy and community education. I mean, there's so much of us that are involved in different committees prior to us coming together collectively. And I just wanted to point that out, that many constituents might not realize that.
Very good.
So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next question here, and Heidi, will have you start there, and then Carrie, and you'll have a minute for this question. Obviously, there's a variety of topics that are being taught within our schools. And so do you support the teaching of gender identity and sexual orientation in the primary and intermediate schools? Or do you believe that it shouldn't be taught there and should stay in the hands of the parents? You have 1
Personally-
minute, 1 minute.
Thank you. Personally, I believe it should be in the hands of the parents. It shouldn't be taught in the school. School should be about education, about math, science, social studies, the core education. I believe that's something that the parents should be bringing up, and the school can educate people on it and about, there is different lifestyles, but it's about the parent teaching the kids, not the school teaching the kids. Thank you.
Okay, Carrie, 1 minute for that question.
Thank you. So as many of our constituents know, the ruling just came out 2 days ago. And we heavily lean on our professional organizations that we belong to, MASA and Minnesota School Board Associations, along with our legal team. And they are very rooted in our best practices and giving us legal opinions. To my knowledge, and I have asked this question, there currently is no families that this affects in our district. And again, when it does come to head, we will have to take it in stride. Thanks, Dave.
Sorry.
All right. So last question, Carrie, we'll start with you, then over to you, Heidi. 1 minute for this question. Just share with us what your best hopes are for the future of our districts, for the future of our students. 1 minute.
1 minute. I have a very pipe dream, so to speak. And I really hope that we can try and fix the funding at the state level so that we can provide equitable education for our kids in our region. I really believe that equitable funding is not where it needs to be, and we need to fix that. And so I will actually put out a I don't know, it's the word I'm thinking of, but something to Senator Coran and Representative Brian Johnson to please, do something about that.
Okay, thank you. Heidi, 1 minute.
Hopes for the district, bringing back our staff that we had to let go. Making sure that every student is getting an education, making sure that they're college ready, making sure that they're trade school ready or job ready, making sure that every student is not being left behind, making sure that each student has that educational core, no matter if they're special needs or a very advanced student. I want to make sure that all our students are being safe and having what they need at their hands. The financing is a huge part of our education. And with being cut so many times, we've had to cut programs, we've had to cut teachers that are absolutely vital to our education program. I want to see our school expand and have whatever we need. Thank you, Dave.
All right, well, thank you, Heidi, and thank you, Carrie. Thank you for your answers and your desire to serve our schools district in this way. And best of luck as we go to the polls here. And so thank you very much. Again, we're going to pause for a moment here until we can get set up for our state representative District 32A. So hang on and we'll be right back.
Thank you, Pastor Berg.
All right, well, welcome back. We are at the end here, and we are going to visit with State Representative District 32A, and we have Renee Berg with us here tonight. Brian Johnson was unable to be with us because of a prior commitment tonight. And so, Renee, obviously, we're going to just visit with you for a little while here, but why don't you go ahead and just start and take 2 minutes to introduce yourself and why you are running for this office.
Excuse me, Renee, just so you're not surprised, when you have 30 seconds, I will hold this up.
Please unmute yourself. Thank you.
How's that?
Great.
Great. Thanks for the opportunity. My name is Renee Berg. I live in Rush City. I was born here. The grandparents came from Sweden straight to Rush City. I went to school here. My children, my 3 sons, went to school here and graduated from Rush City. I have a bachelor's degree from Winona State University. I had a business here in town for 20 some years, and then went again back to school and got my license as alcohol and drug counselor. I'm licensed with the Minnesota Board of Behavioral Health. And I continue to work, and I have worked at a variety of places, Hazelden, River Place, Delwood. I worked in Cambridge for 12 years, ran an outpatient center in Mora for Delwood, and therefore leads to one of the main reasons that I've made this decision to run. I ran in 2018 and I'm running again, besides the fact that my children talked me into it. But I have great passion and concern for young people, school funding, the health issues, health insurance, prescription drug costs, School funding is a big issue. I've been listening to the folks before here. And I feel like someone like myself could well represent the folks in northern Chisago and Isani County by really meeting their needs, bringing their concerns about these social issues as well as many other issues to the state.
Okay, thank you, Renee. And again, welcome to the race. We understand within our district that many businesses have been impacted by the pandemic in one way or another. Many have been taking out loans, applied for grants. They've had to reduce their workforce expenses to survive. What are your ideas to protect businesses when it comes time for the state to pay back the debt we have incurred because of the pandemic? You have 2 minutes.
So is the question about how this has affected the businesses or how the businesses are going to help pay back the debt? Can you clarify the question?
Yeah, how are businesses going to respond and rebound after having taken out loans, grants, reduced workforce, expenses? How are they going to bounce back, especially since the state incurred debt here?
Many businesses may not bounce back. I owned a restaurant at one time myself, and I know the narrow margin that a restaurant exists on at some level anyway. Many small businesses like that, but I think our state has done a good job of offering loans and other things. I have a friend who owns a business here in town, and she's been able to stay afloat quite well. So she's not taken on the loans or the offers that this program is that the state has offered, but many people have. But there's huge businesses, even where I work in chemical dependency. So there's been a lack of persons attending our treatment centers because the courts are not fully running. Probation officers aren't working like they were. Judges aren't doing as much and sending as many people to getting the help that that they might need. So I serve on a board for chemical dependency centers in Mora, and we're suffering, but we've taken advantage of some of the opportunities, grants, and we have the opportunity of a loan with only 2% interest to pay back. So I think with ambitious business owners, I have faith that they will be able to come out of this. I really do.
Okay, thank you. If you win, you'll be faced with budget challenges. What are your 2 state departments or line items in the state budget where you believe we could reduce spending? You have 2 minutes.
I think we could be more cautious and more mindful and more efficient in a lot of areas. I find it difficult at this time right now to think about where cuts could be, certainly not in schools. I know some of the folks were speaking earlier about school funding, and I think if anything, state needs to help us in the rural areas and with the formulas. And as someone earlier mentioned, low on the list of amounts that our formulas have equated for us. And there was mention of gas tax. And I agree with the folks that responded to that that's vital. It's not something we can add. But I really, other than stopping raises for people, maybe freeze on salary. I believe salary is a big issue, but I can't see us doing that. So I guess I can't really say what number 1 or 2 place I'd want to see us cut. If anything, we're all in more need than ever.
Okay, thank you. Can you share with us your views on state mandated paid leave programs? This would be required paid time off for sick leave or family leave. How much time off is the appropriate amount? How should this time off be funded? Who pays? You have a minute and a half.
I've done a lot of traveling in Europe, and I've watched family, loved ones, for example, in Sweden that are have paid time off, family leave when they have a child. I think it should be mandated that we have sick leave, and I think that, yes, the employer has to assume that cost. I can't imagine where it would come from. I know depending on the taxes, like in Europe, they are of course paying more taxes out of their income than we do here, which that's where a lot of that money comes from for the extreme amounts of like family leave. They get I think it's 12 to 18, maybe 6 months that if you have a child, both parents are paid to have that time off. I don't see us having that here, but I do think we need to have paid time off. And I believe the employer, at least where the boards I sit on and where I'm involved, we have to pay those benefits.
Okay, thank you. Can you share with us your opinion on support of increased state gas tax? Do you agree with that or no? And can you explain your answer? You have 1 minute.
Okay. I was listening to the folks respond to that earlier. I'd be more in favor of raising tax of alcohol and cigarettes. And for now, anyway, I as well agree with what the fellows spoke of earlier, that this isn't a time to be raising gas tax. I do, however, think that we need to put some priority in pollution and keeping our air clean, or at least making more efforts towards that. And that might be related to a gas tax, but right now I'd like to see us finding that monies elsewhere.
Okay, thank you. Could you speak to the idea of legalizing marijuana and sports betting as ways to raise revenue for the state without taxing businesses and employees? Do you support these initiatives? This is a minute question.
I believe that the medical marijuana has been somewhat of a problem working in where I work. Folks that really need medical marijuana, it's expensive to buy it and through the system that we have. And I agree with legalizing marijuana, but I also agree that we need to be closely monitoring that. I think that the fact that we're arresting people and we're having people in jail, and if we're talking about how as a state we're better off and where we're going to save money, we house a lot of people in prison for minor, what I consider minor violations with marijuana. I work with people on probation each day, felons and lower level offenders. I think we're spending a lot of money on housing folks with marijuana charges. I'd like to see it legalized.
Okay. How about 30 seconds on the other part of the question, the sports betting?
Well, there's a lot of betting going on. We have casinos all around, and I respect that that they remain so. There's gambling everywhere, pull tabs, many things that are going on. We have the Every gas station is selling for the Minnesota, pull tabs, scratch offs, all of that. I think it's been great. A lot of money is going towards causes. I need to know more about. I know Minnesota is not one. There are a few states that have legalized sports betting. I would need to know more about how we enforce that, how we police it, how we see that it be done right. But I also see addiction with gambling. And that is a problem. It's a big problem. We need to have money to address that as well.
Okay, thank you. Can you share your vision for police reform? And is reform needed locally? Why or why not? You have a minute and a half.
I think reform needs to happen. I think for example, in my field, I'm required to have a bachelor's degree. I'm required to have 40 units of CEUs every other year, and I pay a large amount, up to $500 every other year for my licensing. I think that their responsibility in this society is as great or greater than mine, probably greater. I think that police reform could begin by having more education. I have to complete education, especially in diversity and especially in ethics. I also believe that police aren't really needed to do social work. I think there needs to be an opportunity of a profession in between there that can assist them in some of the calls, many of the calls that they receive. But I do believe that there is systemic racism in Minnesota as well. And I think that education and more training is necessary.
Thank you, Renee. So last question for you tonight before we wrap up. As far as our district, what do you see as the number one concern and how would we need to address it?
I'm afraid I can't narrow it down to number one. I know that the incumbent is spending a lot of efforts about maybe legal things. I would like to see more efforts in representation for school funding, more effort put into health issues, prescription drug issues. If I have the opportunity to serve on a committee, any committees, I want especially to look at school funding so our schools are getting a fair amount from the state and not having to look to property owners. I'd also like to see better housing, income-based housing for elderly, especially. I don't know what will happen to me in a few years if I need that level of housing, because I couldn't afford $10,000 a month in a assisted living or whatever. I'm afraid, Bill, I can't just say one thing that is of the biggest concern. I do know a lot of our tax money is going to house people in prisons, and I'd like to see a change. I'd like us to spend more time investing in people learning, getting educated, encouragement towards a career, and less time in prison.
Well, thank you, Renee. Thank you for being with us tonight, for answering these questions, and best of luck in the race.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we're at the end of our evening here, and so I just want to thank you for joining us this evening for the 2020 North 65 Chamber of Commerce Candidate Forum. If you have questions about what's on your ballot, registering to vote, contacting candidates, or other voting issues, please visit the Minnesota Secretary of State website. If you'd like more information about the North 65 Chamber and its members, you can visit the north65chamber.com. And as well, I just want to remind you that this has been recorded and you can find it on the North 65 YouTube channel. So thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you very much to the candidates for their time, and have a great rest of the evening.